Good evening, everyone. I'm Jen Wilger. I'm the executive director and one of the co-founders of Temple Grandin School. And thank you. Nothing like the home crowd, right? I'm here to welcome you guys and thank you all for coming to help us kick off Autism Awareness Month and celebrate the 5th year anniversary of programming at Temple Grandin School. So we are really, really excited to be here. It's hard for me to believe that it's been 5 years. If it were lighter, I could look around and see in this room some of you who were probably with us in a room smaller than this when we put out there that we were about to embark on this great journey to develop specialized programming to serve the needs of students with Asperger's and similar learning profiles in Colorado. But here we all are, and so if you were there then, welcome. If you are just joining us for the first time tonight, welcome. We are glad you are here. Welcome to our Temple Grandin family. Before we dive into our topic, which is a meaty topic of neurodiversity in the workplace, there's a few people that we want to thank tonight. Our sponsors have made it possible for us to host this entire evening at E-Town with our expenses covered. So all of your ticket prices and things that you donate tonight are going straight to our students and our school. Yeah, thank you. So specifically, I want to recognize the Canned Aid Foundation and Davis, Graham, and Stubbs Law Firm, our sponsors at the $5,000 level. And also at the $2,500 level, we'd like to thank Sphero, and also on the side, thank them for hosting our students when we went to visit their lovely office facility here in Boulder. And to our friends, John and Jill Sheldon, great supporters of all things on the spectrum here in the Boulder community. Your support and the support of other sponsors that you'll find listed in our program, again, has made it possible for us to cover our expenses here. So we've got a great venue. We've had great food provided by Frosca. We have some engaging speakers, and I think that's all the ingredients we need for a delicious evening that's already begun. Our planning committee and staff have been working on this event since early fall, and I want to give them a shout out. So our staff and board, John Nichols, Jason Lynch, Marsha Baranchik, Moya Smith, Leslie Levinson, Rosie Paz, a parent, and our fearless leader, Leanne Pastvalich. Woo! So I'm going to brag a little bit on Leanne. She was an unstoppable champion for this event, and it's been a great ride, and I'm just so privileged to work alongside of her and all of our great staff here at Temple Grandin. So let's give a shout out to our staff. At Temple Grandin School, it is our task to prepare neurodiverse students to take their place in colleges, universities, and workplaces throughout this community and beyond to wherever their potential takes them. We think that we've got some good ideas of how to do that. We have one alum here tonight and 8 others who have made that transition. So 89% of our graduates are successfully transitioning into workplace and employment. So we're pretty proud of that statistic. I'm proud personally that my own son is one of them. But we know that as hard as we work, and believe me, our teachers, their dedication goes deep. They are with these students day after day, week after week, month after month, in many cases now year after year, which is fantastic. We're only part of the equation. The other half of the equation is you, is the communities, and is part of our work to help you be prepared to receive these students. So each one of you represents a workplace, a family, a community, a set of connections that need to know the potential that these students can bring. Your attendance tonight is so encouraging to us as we're working with you to create a space for these neurodiverse perspectives to be heard. Our students are the reason why we're here. They inspire us every day, and we think they're going to inspire you too. At this time, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Jason Lynch. Jason is a parent of a student at Temple Grandin School. This is their second year with us in our community. And in addition to moderating tonight, he has stepped up recently to take on the leadership of our board of directors. So we are excited to have him and his outstanding verbal skills, which I might say run in your family, as our moderator tonight. So Jason, why don't you come on up and introduce our panel?
You guys want to come up too? Come on up. Yeah. Will you find out if this is our water from Leanne? Thank you very much. Any seat, whatever makes you comfortable. All right. There you are. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. As Jen said, I'm Jason Lynch. I'm a parent of a student at Temple Grandin School. I'm the current chair of the board, and we are so honored and thrilled that you've joined us and our guests tonight. We are in a very exciting time in our community. We're celebrating our 5th anniversary right now. We have a proven program. Jen, the teachers and staff have found something magical that works with students on the spectrum and who have similar learning profiles. As a parent, I see it every day. And we are leaving our startup phase. We're maturing as an institution, and we have a program we want to share with the world because we know it works and we know others can use it. One of the things we're doing is we are getting closer to locating a permanent home that's going to allow us to grow and share our program. One thing I hope that happens tonight is that you're inspired by what the school's doing. You've probably seen in your paperwork this evening that we have some needs that our school is looking to fill. If you are inspired beyond what you've already done by being here tonight, we hope that you'll think about additional giving to the Temple Grandin School. Our mission is important not only for what's going on in the classroom and with our kids, but for the community and for our economy and for our companies. And so that's sort of our focus tonight, is what does it mean to be neurodiverse in the workplace? What does it mean to be an employee who's neurodiverse? What does it mean to be an employer or manager of people who are neurodiverse? You've probably heard the statistic. The CDC estimates that 1 in 68 school-age children are on the autism spectrum. And what that means is millions of our children, millions of our young people, millions of our employees, of our coworkers, of our spouses are on the spectrum. And they're born and are living in a world that's presently, at least, not paying attention to what they need to thrive. But that's changing. One of the reasons it's changing is because of the 3 people who we have here tonight and who we're going to have what I hope is going to be, and I know is going to be, a really insightful and interesting conversation. I have to begin, of course, by introducing the namesake of our school. We are so honored to have Dr. Temple Grandin with us tonight. She is frequently called the most accomplished and well-known adult with autism in the world. There is no denying that when you consider her accomplishments. She is a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. She's the author or co-author of more than 10 books. She is, had a successful career as an industrial designer, designing livestock handling equipment and changing the way livestock handling industry thinks about how they work with animals. In 2010, Time magazine named Temple Grandin one of the 100 most influential people in the world. And if all that weren't enough, her life was the subject of an HBO movie in which Claire Danes played Temple Grandin, which went on to win Emmys and a Golden Globe. Temple, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's good to be here.
I promise you we'd have water. That is yours.
Okay.
Phil, Dave.
Thank you.
Let me jump to the far end here. Phil McKinney. For those of you who don't know Phil or his reputation, he is a champion and leader of innovation. He's presently the president and CEO of an R&D organization called Cable Labs, which is setting the R&D and innovation agenda for the cable industry. He's the former chief technology officer at Hewlett-Packard. He is a prolific writer and podcaster. He's the author of the book Beyond the Obvious. It is a rule-breaking approach to the power of innovation. He has written thousands of blog posts. philmckinney.com. Check it out. There is so much content there. It's overwhelming, but it covers so many spheres, including what we're talking about tonight. He's also the host of the award-winning podcast Killer Innovations. If you care about how your company or your organization operates, innovates, and creates, you need to know about Phil McKinney and his ideas. He's also one of the co-founders of Hacking Autism. He has a deep knowledge about our subject tonight. Thank you for joining us, Phil. And we also have with us David Finch, who is a speaker, a humorist, a writer, and the author of the New York Times best-selling book, The Journal of Best Practices, a memoir of marriage, Asperger's syndrome, and one man's quest to be a better husband. This book, if you're...
He hadn't made a joke, and yet everybody's laughing. I see we can all relate.
If you're here tonight and you have not read this book, you need to read it. It is an astonishingly honest, courageous, and laugh-out-loud funny account of David's coming to terms with an Asperger's diagnosis in adulthood and his marriage. He has substantial other writing as well. DavidJFinch.com is the home for all things that Dave has to offer. The clarity and insight of his book is truly remarkable. If you haven't read it, I strongly urge you to check it out. So please, one last welcome for our guests, and we'll get started. So Temple, if I could, I'd like to start with a question for you this evening. I understand that you began your professional career doing freelance work.
That's right.
And I wonder if you could talk for a moment about how freelance work can help young people on the spectrum grow professionally.
Well, I started out in high school just making some signs, painting signs and selling them. The first sign was for a beauty shop. Then that morphed on into cattle facilities. What I had to do, if you want to see them, you can go to Beef Plant Video Tour with Temple Grandin. Greeley's got my equipment, and Fort Morgan's got it too. You can see it on Beef Plant Video Tour. When you're weird, the way you sell yourself is portfolio. And I had a very nice brochure, drawings I would show people, photographs. Now, I think I want to just mention some people who really helped me. One was my science teacher. I had a great science teacher, and he showed me interesting things to motivate me to study. So I was reading this really super interesting thing about the spawn of Clippy, Business Week, all kinds of fun. Oh, he was a disaster. Oh, the hackers got into it, and he wrote nasty tweets. It was just terrible. You know, this magazine's a real mixture of kind of silly stuff like that, and then really serious stuff. Like this article in here about water contamination. See this old hippie there? It's my age. He runs the Des Moines Waterworks, and they're finding nitrites in the water. And of course, farmers aren't very happy about that. Now, instead of suing each other, which they're doing, the whole thing is just stupid, engineers need to find a solution to the problem. We have to farm that land in Iowa. It is the most fertile land there is. We have to farm it. That's not an option not to farm it. We got to figure out how to keep nitrites out of the water. So maybe want to help the old hippie out. And then here's another great magazine. You got the MIT Technology Magazine, 35 innovators under 35, probably some on the spectrum. Here's a polymer that's going to clean up the oceans. Really, really interesting. Nature. And then this one I picked out, I was kind of figuring out, ancient cattle returned to Europe. Yes, they do travel on regular trucks. But how about books to inspire budding scientists and how to stop aging? So this is some interesting things. And these magazines, they need to be at the Temple Grandin School, and I'm going to leave them with them, because we've got to show kids interesting stuff. All right, now I was the kind of kid that was a visual thinker, thought totally in pictures. See, the work I've done with cattle is a field called industrial design. So you take a product like the iPhone. Steve Jobs was an artist, probably on the spectrum. He made the interface, but the engineers had to make it work. That's the mathematical mind. Different minds working together. I'm a visual thinker. I couldn't do algebra, so how to get through college? Thank goodness, finite math was the required class in '67. And I just got back from Utah, and the university in Utah are allowing statistics as a substitute for algebra. I could have gotten through that. Then you have your mathematician minds. Then you've got those computer programmers, engineers. Then you got the verbal thinkers. And half of Silicon Valley's on the spectrum. I've been there. I've made a big point of jumping between the silos. Oh yes, I was over there when they remodeled the big Cargill plant. I worked with millwrights that I know are on the spectrum. Smart millwrights in skilled trades. And one of the worst things the schools have done is taken out skilled trades. Gigantic shortage of auto mechanics and diesel mechanics right now. But we got to show kids interesting stuff to get them interested in interesting stuff. And here's some stuff from outside the special ed silo. I think you already get Science and Nature. But you got to have a fun magazine like Business Week. They had a great article on United Airlines. United Airlines' quest to be less awful. And you know what? Their new CEO got his butt out of the office and actually made him less awful. They have actually improved a whole lot. And then, this is like bad, he had to have a heart transplant. And he's on heavy doses of immunosuppressive drugs, and the doctors banned him from the airport. But he actually made them less awful by getting out in the field and finding out that you can't load and unload a plane in 20 minutes. That's just like totally impossible. We got to show kids interesting things. So here are some magazines they need to get in the Temple Grandin School library. You can go on to somebody else.
I'll be sure that they show up there.
A little bit of that autism trait gives creativity, intelligence. If you got rid of all the Asperger genes, I don't know, we'd still be in caves where all the social yaks would be around the campfire.
Temple,
Go ahead, Jason.
there's just no following that up.
You're expecting
Well, I don't know. I was reading this at lunch. Oh, let me tell you, Spawn of Clippy's a mess.
So,
I always hated Clippy anyway. And when my mother was learning to use the computer, she hated him. He'd leer at her when she made a mistake.
Temple, you have obviously an amazing capacity to understand a system, to understand a set of circumstances, and to see solutions, to see the problems, to see solutions. Was that an ability that you came to understand for yourself, or did you have someone, mentors or others, who helped you see that ability?
Well, when I was a young kid, my ability in art was always encouraged when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, and I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. In the 50s, it was a combination of strict Miss Manners meals and learning shaking hands and all of that, with hours of time where I could experiment with my kite experiments and aviation experiments and parachute experiments. And just do creative things. Now, I didn't know when I was young that other people didn't think visually. And I didn't realize that until I started writing one of my first books, Thinking in Pictures. Then I discovered that there's this other kind of thinking, pattern thinking, and then word thinking. And in the Autistic Brain book, I just give you the science, evidence-based, that the art mind exists, the mathematical mind exists, and the word thinking mind exists. Those really do exist. It's been interesting for me to discover by interviewing people how other people think.
Mm-hmm. Phil, you recently wrote on your blog and I think this is a theme of yours, is that you see huge untapped potential in neurodiversity. Describe what that potential looks like from your perspective.
Well, my entire career has been based on innovation and creativity. When I was CTO at Hewlett-Packard and in my role at Cable Labs, it's all about inventing and inventing the future. To create a highly innovative team, you need a diverse set of people who all look at the problem differently. The problem is we have a challenge just in society today around just the broader perspective of diversity. But I'm a big fan of the neurodiversity hiring approach to get people onto a team that is diverse as possible in thinking styles. And when you do that, the fact that you're getting that different perspective as a critical input into it, it can have just absolutely dramatic effect on an organization's ability to solve problems, find new ideas, new products, new services, launch new things. However, the challenge is that one, it's not recognized across a broad enough population of the employers out there. And two, the HR functions, the recruiting functions, make no adjustments to being able to go find those people that are neurodiverse and then a mechanism to bring them inside the organization.
When you were at Hewlett-Packard, we were talking earlier, and you said you just have to look at the numbers. And in that company, there's more than 40,000 engineers, and you do the math, you're going to have a meaningful population of people on the spectrum. So,
yeah, they're there. And in many cases, it's kind of the hidden part of an employment, right? When I retired from HP at the end of 11, HP was 240,000 employees, 47,000 engineers, 400 PhD researchers in HP labs, right? Just do the numbers. You'll figure it out.
But at
and look, we all have, you know, and in fact, I had people on my team who weren't self-identified, but you knew. But as a good manager, you have to know how do you get the most potential out of them, and when do you put them into a position that is an artificial thing that the corporate governance is telling you to do, like promote. Like, I'm not, you know, this person's an individual contributor. They work phenomenally in their lab. They have phenomenal output. I'm going to keep them in the lab because that's where they're going to
Don't ruin a good techie.
Exactly. Don't screw it up by telling them they got to become a manager.
And I've seen too many good techies kicked upstairs, and it's just been a mess.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why, for instance, at both HP and at Cable Labs, we're big believers in what we call a TCP, technical career path. So we maintain a complete parallel career path up to the equivalent of an executive vice president, and the person never has to move into management. And that one of the reasons for that is to accommodate those really good techies who, you know that you want to promote them, but management says to promote them, you got to move them into management, and you know they're going to like really be a bad manager.
Yeah.
So keep them in what they do, but give them the career opportunities to grow and be properly compensated for the value and impact they have on the organization.
So, David, this brings up a wonderful chapter in your book where you are recounting a series of performance reviews that one of your managers is giving you.
Right.
And where it ends up, of course, is you go home to your wife and say, we need to institute performance reviews at home. But what I want to ask you about is, at one point in recounting one of these reviews, you say that you thought to yourself, I wonder if I should tell them I have Asperger's. And I wonder if you could talk about your experience being on the spectrum in the workplace, having employers who knew or didn't know, and whether you think it makes a difference to self-identify explicitly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you bring that up, especially coming right off of what Phil was just saying, a brilliant point about, and Temple, you know, don't ruin a good techie. I'm a product of somebody who belonged in the back of a lab and was fine there, and had an opportunity, is the corporate word, an opportunity, to move into you know, more of a, like you were saying, a people role, a management role, where I really had to learn how to engage with people in a way that wasn't horribly off-putting. And you can learn, fortunately, you can learn some things by rote. But when it comes to, you know, self-identifying, and a lot of people ask me when I do my speaking engagements, should I disclose? Should I go into the dating scene? Should I go into the job interview and lead with, hey, I'm autistic, I've got Asperger's? It's like, no, you wouldn't lead with, hey, I'm allergic to, I've got food sensitivities. Like, that's not what you introduce yourself with. It's just part of your composition, and that gets revealed over time. And you can be very proud of your neurological heritage, but you don't need to bring it front and center every time. And I think that my experience, certainly in the corporate world, wasn't a good fit. And I realize there are cameras rolling, and I might need a corporate job again someday, so just employers, take it with a grain of salt. This is all smoke and mirrors. I'm really corporate material. That's why I'm wearing a suit. Actually, no, I'll get to your thing, but I really...
Okay, we're off the rails now.
Yeah, that's what happens. In Asperger's panel, it's like you ask an Aspie what time it is, and they'll tell you how to build a watch. But the reason I'm wearing a suit is because I'm acutely aware of the dynamics of the panel. So we have Phil McKinney. Hi, I just, did my thing in Chicago, and then I ran HP. And then when I was tired of literally running HP, this enormous institution, I just decided to run another huge, massively influential company while I was writing thousands of articles and being a prolific, creative genius, changing the way people think about neurodiversity in the workplace, and I'm here tonight. And then, and after this, I'm going to go figure out how we can colonize Venus, and it'll be no big thing, and I'll write some more books. And then Dr. Grandin, who I have no business even sitting next to. She's so brilliant. And okay, so I once made a joke, and this is not true, but I know the people in the crowd with Asperger's will understand this. I once made a joke that Asperger's is autism for people who do things in half measures, and I was making fun of myself. But when I look at myself with Temple, I'm literally a tenth of what Temple is as a person. So Temple is autistic, enormously successful, changed the way that our relationship with livestock and the way that we treat animals, which is a tremendous contribution to the world. HBO made a picture about her, and she has multiple books out. I'm Asperger's, like not quite autistic. I have written a book, and anybody can write a book. It's really not that hard. I wrote a book, and HBO...
I looked it up. It's got good Amazon reviews.
Thank you. This is important.
Yeah.
Amazon karma is a good thing. And 3/4 of the reviews were written by Phil McKinney and Temple. I didn't pay them. And then HBO made an award-winning picture about Temple and her contributions to the world. HBO almost bought a show from me, and 2 months ago said, actually, we don't want to make this show about you. So I'm like almost on the way to
All right,
Temple.
can you
in every
see
category.
the marketing meeting when they were trying to sell the suits on making a movie about an autistic professor who designs slaughterhouses?
How do you say no to that?
Well, that's basically what it's about.
That's gold.
The other thing that's really important is the
Yeah.
producer of that movie is Emily Gerson Sains, the mother of an autistic child, and that's one of the reasons why it came out so well, because Emily Gerson Sains had to get the right people together to make that movie.
And she had a sensibility for
Absolutely.
what it really entails, what the lifestyle is on both sides of the spectrum when you are the person with autism. And
It took a while to find the right people to do it. And when she found Mick Jackson, he was the right person, a visual thinker who absolutely got it.
and he knew how to do it.
Yeah, and he
Claire
picked
Danes,
out Claire Danes.
Yeah, and she, I mean, come on, that's great. And that really speaks to your question, Steve, full circle. I take notes about conversations as they're happening for a reason. But that's what it is in a corporate setting, the ability, as Phil mentioned very astutely, he's like, yeah, tell me about being astute. I'm Phil McKinney. Like, you're so smart. That's like sketching a picture of a giraffe and saying to Picasso, like, you're a good painter. That's really good. But in a corporate setting, being able to identify what that talent and contribution will be, and letting that talent grow and nourish that talent to be what it needs to be without putting other expectations on it is a very tricky balancing act. And in my situation, so for those of you who don't know, I wasn't always a big writer and smart aleck. I was an engineer for 10 years as an audio semiconductor manufacturer, blah, 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 blah. I don't even care, you don't have to. And then I got into more of the business development marketing side when they took my function and moved it to India, and I didn't want to move to India. And they said, well, you can go into marketing, that's what we do for people. And in my situation, I really needed some marketing guys like, what? Wait, huh? I really am a marketer, though. You mean I'm not? No, you are. And then there's people who pretend to be like me, and that we end up writing books. But there's two sides of the employment coin. There's the one where it's identifying that talent and knowing what to do with a very, sometimes very difficult person to manage on your hands.
The thing I getting very concerned about right now, and this is not something to laugh about.
Right.
I'm seeing too many young kids kind of getting screened out. Okay, you managed to get that engineer's job, but I'm seeing too many kids getting addicted to video games, and they're not learning how to program them. Getting coddled, not learning job skills. Yeah. That needs to start at 13. Mother set me up with a sewing job with a freelance seamstress when I was 13. 15, I was cleaning horse stalls. Then I was doing freelance sign painting and carpentry work. You've got to learn how to do a job for somebody else. I'm seeing smart kids on the spectrum just crashing and burning when they graduate because they've never had a job. They've gone through college without having a job.
Right.
I had internships. I was at my aunt's ranch. She had a guest ranch. I had to wait on some tables. That wasn't fun. That was part of the job. Yep. And I interned at a research lab where I rented a house with another lady. Lots of work experience where you're working for somebody else outside the home. And I'm seeing too many smart kids getting coddled. Another problem is I jump between the silos, because I'll jump right in the special ed silo, and then I'll jump right back out of it, go visit NASA and find all the older guys that are on the spectrum, and go to Silicon Valley and find the younger guys. But I'm seeing too many smart kids just going down a really bad path and not learning any basic skills and not having good outcomes. And then the gray hairs that was working with the millwrights, they've got great careers because they took welding at school and they had paper routes and learned how to work.
And they know what it meant to be an employee.
That's right.
And
absolutely.
That is something that starts at home.
That's right.
And if you don't have the wherewithal to instill that at home, that's why we need programs like what's happening at Temple Grandin School and some other places where you learn these. It is as much as we would love to live in a society that makes it very easy for people with autism to engage in a workplace in a way that's very comfortable for them, that would be wonderful. In the meantime, it is truly incumbent upon the individual with autism to know how to be an employee.
We've got to learn how to work, and we've got to find paper route substitutes starting in middle school, like walking dogs. But I'm seeing too many parents kind of coddling the kids, seeing like smart 12-year-olds that don't know how to shake hands. Not enough being done on develop the third grader who's got the real great skill in math, or develop the art skill that can turn into an industrial design degree. Basically, one geeky kid's going to Silicon Valley, and another geeky kid's collecting Social Security on disability, playing video games in the basement. And I think this is a real serious problem. And the problem is, I find in special ed, they can really get in a silo. That's not good. And maybe the special ed departments better have this great array of magazines to show the kids that there's a big, interesting world out there.
So Phil, what's the other side of that? Talk to us about the challenges of being the manager and the employer of someone on the spectrum. What's your experience been like in changing the way you recruit and evaluate and then manage people who become employees in your companies?
Well, one, I think I agree with Temple. We need those on the spectrum to come in with basic job skills. We're not, in fact, I hate the word accommodation, because accommodation means you're lowering the bar. And we don't need, it's not about lowering the bar. The people on the spectrum deliver a huge amount of value. But we've learned over the years, though, that you do need to set up a little bit of a different management structure. You need a different recruiting process. For instance, at Cable Labs, the recruiting process typically includes someone coming in, doing a full-day interview, and then over the lunch hour, they have to make a presentation. In some cases, some of the people that have come in that have been on the spectrum, we've opted them out of the presentation. But what we do is we team them with one of our engineers to sit down and do a coding project for the afternoon. So they spent the afternoon
Basically showing their portfolio.
Right, they show their portfolio and the effect of actually having a conversation around that. When we hire, then we actually take those that are on the spectrum and we team them with a mentor. This is not their manager. This is somebody else within the organization to help them navigate the office teams, culture, all those kinds of things. And with that, we're very careful about picking the right mentor to work with them. And in the case both at HP and at Cable Labs, we've had phenomenal success. With that, where the individuals that we've brought on have had, huge and positive impact.
Well, another thing, when I was doing consulting all the time, we'd have a project meeting like at a Cargill plant or a Tyson plant, something like that. Actually, it was IBP when I was doing this, and Swift. Is you sit down and I want to find out exactly what the outcome of the job is. We got to do this many cattle per hour, 4 people. So you got to stay 10 feet off the railroad track. In other words, go to all the parameters so I know in writing, in bullet points, what this project has to do. A very clear outcome. When I worked for the Farm and Ranchman magazine, I knew I had to write this many articles, and they were due April 5th, the 15th of the month. The articles were due. The other thing, and this is one little accommodation, it isn't much of an accommodation, but it's an important one, do not burden them with long strings of verbal information.
Yes.
That doesn't work.
Right.
I want, if it's not even something as simple as tear down the ice cream machine at McDonald's, tear down steps, bullet points, cleaning steps, boom, 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 reassemble steps, because working memory is a problem. Clear outcomes. Don't just say develop new software.
Right.
Say, I want an app for a phone that does some specific thing. It's on this platform and it needs this much memory.
Yep.
Where you have a clear outcome of the job and the deadline. I had no problems working for deadlines for the magazine.
Well, your point's exactly right on from the standpoint, though. For instance, today we had a lunch and learn at Cable Labs. We had 150 in the room. And we talked about, it was all about neurodiversity. But what it wasn't about just neurodiversity from the standpoint of people on the Asperger's. We surveyed everybody in the company to learn what their neurodiversity type was, and then went through and spent an hour explaining all those different types to everybody to recognize that, hey, everybody's different.
I really agree with you about the mentors, because when I was at Farm and Ranchman, we got a new manager. And he thought I was really weird, and he didn't really like me very much. But the nice lady that worked in graphic design, she says, Jim doesn't like you. We're going to have to save your job by getting a portfolio of every article you've ever done. So I made this giant scrapbook this thick, every article I ever did, and I showed it to Jim, and he gave me a raise. My portfolio saved me.
Yep.
But I didn't get the warning that Jim wasn't liking some of my jokes and some things. And thank you, Susie, the graphics lady, for saving me.
Right, that's it. You are right on from the standpoint of what we have found with mentors, particularly even at HP. I had a number of people on my team who were, they never declared, but you knew they were on the spectrum. But they were looking for that kind of feedback. Help me from the standpoint of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and tell me when I'm in trouble.
What Susie told me, she just pulled me in, she says, well, the new boss doesn't like you. We just got to get a whole big scrapbook of all your articles together to show Jim. And so we spent the whole rest of the day and the next day making this scrapbook, and I took it in and showed him, and he goes, "Ooh, I didn't realize you'd done all that."
The proof is in the work you do.
I sold the work.
So there's a combination of things happening here, and a lot of you are already connecting these dots. But part of this Temple success story in this particular example is
that was early, very early in my career.
right.
Very early.
So very early, and Temple had done the work, and she had proven her stuff. She knew her stuff, she had proven it, and
I
she had
also
contributed.
kept all my other articles. I tell people,
Right.
protect your portfolio. Keep hard copies of everything you do.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens, 10 years from now, flash drives no longer work. You don't want your stuff on that. Hard copy, keep it in a dark place so it doesn't get ruined, because you never know when you're going to need that portfolio.
Yep.
That's your IP that you're creating. And then you also had a mentor, a guardian angel like mine, and I wrote about this a little bit in the book. Mine is Cliff, this guy Cliff, who basically said, you're going into marketing, you have deplorable skills. In fact, I wasn't allowed in meetings. Sales guys would not let me anywhere near the conference room when customers were in when I was an engineer, because I would tell them, frankly...
You tell them how horrible the product was or something. Oh, I made that mistake.
That honesty thing, you gotta watch out for that.
Yeah.
It's so funny. You don't see the forest for the trees. So I didn't want to jeopardize my career by saying that an inferior product was indeed superior. So I would say, like, no, ours won't do in a million years what you need it to do. And the sales guy's like, oh.
I did the same thing when I was working for Corral Industries. I told the client, "Oh, your cattle are going to jump out of this facility. The fence is too low," and I got in trouble with the boss for that.
You get your hand slapped.
Oh, I got slapped for that.
And what nobody ever teaches you until it's too late, and that's why I love this program. If I had worked there, I'd still be an engineer. I wouldn't be an idiot in a suit. They don't teach you on day one, listen, what's going to give you a good career here is not honesty and facts. It's going to be playing the people that are in front of you the way that you need to play them. And that's a skill that seems very disingenuous to a lot of people.
Well, the problem is in the work world, though, is look at the hiring challenges we have in the U.S. Look at Silicon Valley; they can't even hire for gender. The fact is we tend to hire people that are just like ourselves. So who's the hiring manager?
But I'm going to give you another reason why we need the visual thinkers. Science magazine had another great article, an update on the Fukushima mess. I didn't bring that issue with me. $100 billion mistake. And when I found out why the reactors melted down, they made a visual thinking mistake. So basic, I couldn't believe it. It's not a very smart idea when you live next to the sea, but this super important emergency cooling pump in a non-waterproof basement. And when the tsunami came in, it flooded and everything shorted out and didn't work. Simple watertight doors, and it wouldn't have happened. And then the next mistake was social, because you have about a week before you're really in trouble. They never picked up the phone and called for help. They sat in the control room and watched it burn up. It wouldn't have been that hard to have stopped it, but they never made the phone call for help until it was too late.
Yep.
That's strictly social.
Yep.
I mean, to me, breach of containment is like the worst thing that could possibly happen. How could you let that happen for social reasons? That's like so bad.
And then the point here is that there was a blind spot in the team. They didn't have a visual thinker on the team.
They didn't have a visual thinker on the team when they originally made it.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, what I've learned sometimes about the mathematical mind, when I've shown them pictures of cattle handling facilities that have distractions in them, they don't see those visual things. The mathematician doesn't see it. But you need to have a visual thinker on the team because this is pretty basic. Electric pumps and generators don't work underwater. This is very basic. And all I need to know about a nuclear reactor is that pump doesn't run you know what.
Right.
$100 billion worth of you know what in environmental contamination.
Yep.
It like blew my mind when I finally figured out why it failed.
But here's the challenge in today's work world. If you go to 99% of the corporations around the world, they do not have a profile of the neural makeup of their organization. They don't even know they have the gap.
Right.
They don't know that they're missing a thinking type on their team.
And I had to read a lot of newspapers and leave a lot of newspaper trash on the airlines on good old United in order to figure that out and piece it all together.
Yep.
Simple watertight doors, and it's kind of easy stuff to buy.
Yep.
Phil, what's gonna have to happen for employers to realize they have a blind spot?
They got to get their butt out of the corporate suite. And I hope Oscar finally gets to where he can go back to the airport again. Because the thing that was amazing is United actually did get a whole lot better. As a passenger, he put more time in the schedule, and as far as I can tell, they haven't bought anything. It's the same airplanes, the same everything. I've talked to a lot of employees. They're all praying for Oscar. But there's some bad Barracuda investors on the board that are probably going to cause trouble.
So one thing, Temple, is to get out of the boardroom, get out of the office, and know what you're doing in the world.
And that's what that Sergio guy, the head of Chrysler, did. He shut down the corporate suite, and he's in the office with the engineers.
But you know what? It's not enough just to collect the data, and here's why.
Then you have to act on it.
You have to act on
That's
it.
right.
After I wrote the book, and being an author doesn't pay, so I had to go back and with my tail between my legs, go back and get another corporate engineering gig for a couple of years, and then I quit so I'm broke again, but very happy. And my manager hired me. She knew about my book, and she had, because nowadays every employer just Googles you right away, and what comes up is like, I'm hard to be with, and she wanted to know more. And I had gotten the job because I knew somebody at the company. I had done great work for them before because I have Asperger's. You do great work for people when you have Asperger's, and he really emphatically recommended me. She Googled me, and first thing she did is she wanted to sit me down and get her parameters on me. So she knew autism. Oh, you've got that A word. You're like that Sheldon Cooper, aren't you? Now.
Oh, when he says he's not Asperger's, but that's not true.
Right, yeah. You need some self-awareness, you know. I'll tell you what, man, that's, when she said those words, I knew that I wasn't Dave Finch qualified candidate. I was Sheldon Cooper, and how am I going to contain this guy once he's in the company? So then when I was working there, I had to take a personality profile. And it turns out I'm an Int J or INP.
Myers-Briggs, good
luck. Yeah, Myers-Briggs says.
What did they say?
They called my employer and said, head for the hills. This guy's out of his. I had a really hard time taking that test because I could see both sides of all the answers. I was like, this is pigeonholing me into some pretty unfair parameters.
Sounds like you were at my lunch meeting today with the engineers arguing.
Well, maybe what you need
why I see both sides.
She called me and she goes, you've had a week to complete this. Why isn't it done? I was like, this test is a joke. Like, I'm
I don't know.
all of these.
What you do is go on Google Scholar and look up all the journal articles on the Myers-Briggs, and then you know how to fill it out.
PhD.
Oh, Google Scholar is wonderful.
That's right. I'm living proof that you can fail a personality test. Ask my wife, Kristen. She'll tell you.
Dave, one of the things that you describe in your book that, again, is sort of jumping back from the employer side to the employee side is you're pretty honest about some behaviors that would be head scratchers to some managers.
Right.
And
Like what kind of behaviors? What behaviors do you do that drive managers crazy?
I like Temple. You are awesome. Okay, so there's driving my managers crazy, and then there is driving my wife crazy.
All right, what about driving the managers
Let's
crazy?
start with the managers, because
Okay.
that's in the spirit of the discussion this evening. Driving my managers crazy are the big things. There are three major things. One is my synchronicity to my schedule, not theirs. So they believe it's very important to have an employee at his desk from 8 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And I said, well, I don't do my best work from 8 to 6. I do my best work in these insane, and you've seen this day in and day out, every day of your career. I guarantee Phil has seen this. I do insanely good work in bursts, and then I need to get the hell out of Dodge and come back in a couple more hours and just go burst mode, and then
Now
leave.
can you work with, have your own schedule, but then have a deadline for project completion?
Yes.
If I was a manager, I could live with that. Say, okay, now 3 weeks from now, it needs to be done.
That's because you're a reasonable person.
Yeah. I don't really care where you do it. I just want it done by a certain
I just
deadline.
want it done, and I would
Care
hear,
if
I
you
just
do it
want
at
it
3
done.
o'clock in the morning on the roof, I really don't care.
I was always told, you're right, I was always told, open door policy, just get your work done when you get it done. And I'd say, okay, great. And then I wouldn't come into the office for 2 weeks because I would get it done really well at home. But at work, I have to deal with intrusions and kind of social interruptions. And the worst thing you can't
get serious work done with that.
No, you cannot. But in fostering a team environment, we had offices, and then they moved us to a beautiful facility in downtown Chicago, and they said, we're getting rid of the offices, and it's going to be all hip height cubicle farm. And don't worry, we'll give you some magnets to hang things. And I stopped going into the office, and they took exception to this, great exception. I was never called into HR, but my manager kept saying, when are you coming into the office this week? And I would say, I'm not, because I'm not productive there.
Well, maybe a little compromise there. You could have like one day you go in. Because I think you do need to be contacting people and then explain, okay, I need some time where I've just got to, Tuesday I'm going to stay home and just really knock out this programming. Yes. And I'll come in, maybe it'd be a different day, but I think you do need to come into the office some. And again, a little flexibility on your part. If I was your manager,
no, Temple is.
Where else do you get
stay
career
home.
counseling on stage in front of 200 people?
For a good
This is
length
great.
of time, but then
You're all set for a corporate job now.
When you're the least flexible person in an autism conference? No, you're right. Temple's exactly right.
Because you need to have the cross-fertilization, because I'm finding I'm doing a lot of traveling, and it's great just to get in and talk to some of the people at school and find out what they're doing, and you need to do that.
It's really important for the company culture too, because when I say I would never go in, I
can understand you can't do serious programming in that horrible cubicle farm, but you go in there for at least one afternoon a week just to talk to other people.
People need to see you, and
That's right.
Most importantly, kids, your manager has to see you. You don't go into the office to get work done. You go into the office to get
make sure
seen.
you go in the office when he's there.
Yes. When the manager's not there, then you get your work done. But when the manager's
go to the secretary and get his schedule.
That's what I would get. Make sure you all have a Google Calendar and you see when your manager's, because I don't want to sound so cynical, but I've found that in the bigger the corporation gets, the more important it is for you to not only get the work done. This is what I was saying before about Temple. To not only get the work done, but know the gamesmanship of the environment that you're in. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I personally no longer wanted to tolerate the gamesmanship of getting on the train every morning, so I was there by 9, and
Oh, no. There's no way you're going to get the serious work done if you do that train 5 days a week.
Right, and they got their best work from me when I was on my terms. And I'll tell you what, it drove my manager nuts, but then she couldn't say anything about it because the work that was handed to her was phenomenal.
And always document it and keep copies of it.
That's
So
called
Phil,
cover your.
Phil, I want to give you 2 new employees, Temple Grandin and David Finch. What do you do as a manager? And not in a hypothetical way, but what have you done as a manager? What have you done, not to make accommodations, but to figure out how to get the best of your employees on the spectrum who have other neurodiverse issues, whether it's ADHD or dyslexia, whatever it might be?
Well, part of it is the old management hierarchical structure where you've got to be in 8 to 5. The organization I took over, the previous leaders actually would get in the parking lot and count cars in the morning. If you weren't in the parking lot by 8 o'clock.
Please.
So we don't do that anymore. In fact, that was day one. I wasn't even technically the CEO yet, and I changed that policy. But it is about letting people work on their own. It doesn't matter your neurodiversity style. Everybody works better. You find your peak time. Are you an early morning person? Do you like to take the afternoons off? Do you want to work late into the evening? Do you need to work? You want to work at home? Giving people that flexibility to find the time. The key, though, is finding managers who are comfortable with that, and that tends to be the toughest problem in the workplace.
Well, the other thing is you do need to have some times where a lot of people can get together.
What we refer to it as team days.
Okay.
So there's team days where everybody comes in, everybody's diverse. We have people who distribute it around the country. Look, at HP, I had people, HP operated in 178 countries. You're a little tough to get everybody together. But you do have to have that form of both getting the team together, but also you have to put together communication structures, and God help please, not email, as a way for a team to stay connected, right? And you can pick. You can mark yourself out, your head's down, you're doing 2 hours of just knocking the thing out, then you come back online, you make yourself
There's
available.
a lot of people that really need a quiet place to work to get serious work done.
Really, a lot of us.
Yeah, and I find like to get serious writing done, I need a 4-hour block of time, no phone, and most of my best writing's done on weekends.
Yeah, and it's actually, there's, now the big thing is there's all these tools that you can program onto your phone and your iPad and your PC, and that shuts off all network connections. So you don't get any of the burps, beeps, and alerts.
Or you just unplug the router.
Yeah, in the office, that's a little tough.
Oh, yeah, the office it would be. Yeah.
But no, you're right. The thing is helping everybody discover when are they most productive. Because we're not all the same. We all either have some form of, some people want the quiet time. Some people feel isolated when they work from home a lot. They want the social interaction. So you as an employer, it's about being flexible and adaptive. And it's not about being adaptive to only people who are of, let's say, just on the spectrum or who just have ADHD, whatever. It's employers need to become more empathetic to all of their employees on what is the best way to get maximum productivity from them versus getting caught up in this 1950s management style.
Well, also just employees need to feel that people care about what they do.
But there's also empathy for management. And I'm not just blowing smoke because I'm going to ask you for a job after this is done. This sounds like a great place to work. No, there's also empathy for management in the sense that, you need to find the managers who will make the right work environment that's best for their team. But you also need to find employees who are not going to abuse or take advantage of those licenses. And not to paint everybody on the spectrum or anybody else with one brush, but I've known most of the engineers and most of the science brains aren't going to be the types that are taking much advantage of that. I always talk to the sales guys. They have a term called gold bricking, which is, I'm at a customer today, but they're playing tennis or whatever they're doing. The engineers aren't the ones out there playing soccer. If they're home, they're logged in, they're doing something. If they're, like you said, shut down for 2 hours, no interruptions, that 2 hours is really working.
Well, what's really interesting is, like, for instance, the hot thing now in Silicon Valley is unlimited vacation time. Rather than having the 1 week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks, for instance, Netflix, unlimited vacation time.
Take what you need.
You can take whatever you need, however long you need. You know what they found ever since they put that program in place? People actually take less vacation.
I'm not surprised.
Because if I'm gone, that means one of my coworkers is picking up the slack if I'm out. And I don't want to inflict them on them. I wouldn't want them to inflict it on me. So it actually puts in kind of a self-regulatory. And this gets back to Temple's thing about the portfolio. Measure on the output. Don't measure on how you get to the output.
Well,
measure the output.
And that's worked really well. That's worked really well on animal welfare at meatpacking plants. I developed a very simple 5-point system for scoring a meatpacking plant on humane slaughter. You measure things like falling down. Okay, first shot stunning score. I just saw these fabulous audit results we just got this year. 99.8 average stunning score, 19 fed beef plants. That's like super good. Because back 20 years ago, I did a survey for the USDA, and only 30% of the plants could shoot 95% dead on the first shot because their stuff was broken. Broken. See, this gets back to management. But it's a very simple scoring system that looks strictly at outcomes. And when I originally worked with McDonald's and Wendy's on implementing this, out of 75 suppliers, only 3 had to build a lot of expensive stuff. Everybody else, it was maintenance, management, and simple fixes. It was all based on outcomes and simple, like traffic rules. It wasn't having all kinds of mounds of paperwork where all your paperwork's in order, but the plant's a mess because they're so busy inspecting the paperwork they never even looked at the plant.
Yeah. One of the things we wanted to do tonight was to save some time for members of our audience to ask some questions if they'd like to. So we're going to have a few folks with microphones if you want to ask a question. Fair notice, however, we are recording tonight, and Temple Grandin owns the rights. So we welcome your questions. We'd like to hear them, but know that it will be recorded and folks in the world may see it. So, but if anyone has any questions, Jen's up in front. with a microphone, and Leanne is got one over there. So I'll let you guys. We'll start right. We got someone right up here first.
Okay, we're on. First of all, thanks a lot for being here. This is incredibly enlightening.
Thank you.
Well worth my trip out from Michigan to see all you guys. A concern for me, and I just brought this up with Lieutenant Governor Calley up in Michigan, who has a daughter on the spectrum, is doing wonderful things for all things autism in Michigan. That is, in order to drive social change, doesn't it seem like we need to start on our college campuses with helping academia understand the real autism as opposed to the autism that needs to be behaviorally modified to walk, talk, and act like neurotypical folks?
They don't have to act like neurotypicals, but they do have to get to class on time and get their homework done.
Yes.
And one of the places where the 50s upbringing really helped me when I finally decided to study is, lunch was at noon, you had to be on time. I had a lot of social problems in college, but time management wasn't one of them. You see, and this gets back teaching basic skills. And that was done in the 50s. And then I was a horrible high school student who didn't care, got bullied and teased. But I got friends who shared interests, things like electronics, horseback riding, those sorts of things. And then my science teacher got me interested in studying, but I didn't have problems with time management. We've got to teach these kids basic skills, like shopping, bank account. Driving's going to take longer. Fortunately, at my aunt's ranch, it was 3 miles up to the mailbox, 3 miles back. I had 200 miles of dirt road practice there. And then after I got my license at the Fort Huachuca military base, again, easy driving, I was a year on easy roads before I even went near a freeway. It's going to take more practice and time.
John Aldo Robeson has a phenomenal word that I love. He says you have to be choosable. And that is life. You have to be choosable to partners, employers, everybody. And there's college can participate, I think, at the university level, collegiate level, in two ways. One is, yes, they can be educating their staff and their other students, the student bodies, in a more organized way on what autism and Asperger's really is in terms of the positive traits, the attributes, and some of the things that come along with it.
And the other thing is they've got to do career-relevant internships. We got to make sure we pound on these working skills before they graduate.
Career internships is massive because not only it exposes you to the realities of the workplace, but you meet people, and getting a job and keeping a job is a social endeavor. And maybe we don't have always the best social instincts. The other ways that I think colleges can prepare students is by, a lot of these kids, going back to the situation you were describing where a child has an IEP and there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on until age 18. Well, age 18, your IEP goes away and your needs don't. If you are prepared from age young to go into college to be independent, we see so many bright kids fall flat on their face because there's no transition, there's just a gap. Yep. And it's like learn how to fly, kick. It's like, dude, you should have taught me how to fly.
Well, I've always said there's got to be a slow transition from the world of school to the world of work. And that is something that I had.
Is that do you think that's college, that slow transition?
Well, that was getting through, yes, it was, because I had a lot of working skills before I went to college. Because I had my aunt's ranch, I had, painting signs, cleaning the horse stalls, the sewing job, and then I had career-relevant internships while I was in college, still going to my aunt's ranch. And then while I was getting my master's, I was painting signs for the carnival, kind of silly signs. But you have to make something that the customer wants. And we need to be working on this, starting with the paper route substitutes. Yeah. Working with these kids young to learn these working skills. And I had that, and I've got 2 other books, do a little shameless book promotion. I've got the Different Not Less, 14 old Asperger's, all employed from high-level to low-level jobs that got diagnosed later in life to help with relationships, which I know you discussed in your book. And another book, The Loving Push, again, profiles of people on the spectrum successful in jobs, and a big giant chapter on the video game addiction problem.
Good.
I think we have another question in the back.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you all for being here. You've covered so many important topics. including what it means for employers to employ neurodiverse employees. You all talked about the burden that employees with neurodiverse employees are carrying now, kind of as we're in this in-between stage with people becoming aware of what's going on before we reach full acceptance. So my question is, we talked about employer, we talked about employee, we talked about mentors, which I think are really important, but we didn't really talk very much about peer-to-peer relationships in the workplace. And I'm curious about your thoughts on what our responsibility in the community and as coworkers is, beyond just general acceptance.
What a thoughtful question. I shouldn't make any judgments. You're a very thoughtful person. That's not exactly fighting words, but that's really wonderful to ask. One of the things I noticed the most was in both my corporate jobs, the people who let me be me and didn't. I always felt like there was the cool jockey, and I don't mean to be picking on the sales guys, but in my experience, it was always the fratty kind of sales guys who didn't understand why I was.
Don't put sales guys in charge of engineering. Very dangerous.
No, that's an explosive situation.
Well, and I was involved in some projects where there were gigantic engineering messes because of a sales guy in charge of engineering.
Yep.
Due to confidentiality, I cannot go into detail on it.
Just
because
change
there's
the names.
cameras on. Well, a sales guy tried to run a construction project and run engineers, build stuff in 5 seconds. It did not work.
No, because they want the product out and
there was no way to do it on the schedule they wanted. They made super expensive, gigantic mistakes, and I'll just leave it at that. And the sales guy that was running a job wouldn't listen to the engineers.
Yeah.
I was involved in that project, and it was a gigantic mess.
And on that's the kind of team where you're not going to get a lot of empathy because the team environment doesn't promote it.
And this guy's so social, he goes on and gets another job after really making this gigantic screw up.
He can get any job he wants afterwards because he's so good at it.
He's so social. He's a salesman after all.
See, it's not just me.
I mean, this actually happened. I can't say
believe
where it was.
But I case in point, I started wearing yoga pants.
Where is this going?
It gets interesting when I stop wearing yoga pants. I started wearing yoga pants last year because my wife said, gee, you're so uncomfortable in these work clothes, and you're grouchy all the time, and it's really for her sake. She hates it when I'm grouchy. She's like, why don't you go buy some yoga pants? So I took her up on it, and I bought yoga pants for men, and they're tailored to look like chinos. They look like slacks, but they're made out of stretchy yoga pants, and I could do lunges in them. You'd never know. And when people found out that these were yoga pants, I was very proud of it. And I said, everybody, hey, those are really nice looking pants. Where'd you get them? I'm like, these are yoga pants, and I got them from Athleta. It's like a company for women. And they're like, nah. And I showed them the tag. There's the camp of people who use that as artillery against me, right? Like, oh, there's Finch with his, and that was a little bit alienating. And then there were the people who were like, that's brilliant. You mean you're comfortable all the time? And to answer your question, it can start with being the person who says, that's an interesting way that you're doing it, but you don't enable an idiot. And if I was wearing yoga pants and not producing, go work at Athleta. But to Temple's very, very good point, I had a portfolio that I could show too. So I could come in a kilt. And
then you always keep that up to date and keep hard copies at home.
That's right.
Because I read a very sad story about a lady engineer who worked for a car company, and she quit, and all her stuff was on some obsolete disk drive, and she had no way of playing it, and she lost her whole portfolio. That's why I'm saying hard copy, keep it someplace where it won't fade.
Diverse.
But before we take the
Because you
next
can
question,
always rescan it.
before we take the next question, Phil, you were describing an experience, I think, with a relatively recent hire, neurodiverse individual, and you were describing what happened with that person's sort of connection to their team. What do you see peer-to-peer in the workplace between neurotypical and neurodiverse?
Well, the key there is making, helping the team. In our case, the team actually participates in the interviewing process. So it's not like just a hiring manager makes the decision and the person's imposed. The team selects the person. So therefore, if the person's on the spectrum, the team actually has participated in that interview process, interview selection. And in some cases, people on the spectrum may not be comfortable in groups or even standing up talking in public. And we've had the experience that with that support of that team, in this particular case, that person has travels all over the place with that team, and that team is a little bit somewhat protective, right? Because just they don't want that. They want to make sure that person's comfortable, and they get invited to all the team events. They're included just as part of the team, and they're not. It's not a situation where they call them out like, oh, we need to do special things. They're just part of the team. They got selected because of the unique capabilities and brought that neurodiversity to the team. They thought differently in an area that they needed that input on, and therefore they become a very valuable member and part of that team.
So they don't get their chops busted for not participating in the dumb picnic that everybody asked.
No, that's all bad. And we've had to change that because the process used to be that if you didn't participate in the picnic, we do a lot of offsites. So once every 2 months, teams will just take the day off and they go do an offsite. And it used to be viewed very negatively if you didn't participate in the team offsite.
Right.
Turns out some people, that's not just not their thing. They're not comfortable, doing, team building exercises where you're doing high ropes or, whatever, whatever it is, right?
Eating public food.
However, it was quite humorous though. One of the teams went off and they did their offsite to a brewery here in Colorado, and then posted it on Facebook, and it was during the workday.
Oh.
So
That's
I
not
kind of
so
I suggested to this particular department they should probably not have
The other
those
thing you
photos.
better remember is nothing online is private.
That's
period.
right. Once
Period.
it's there, it's always there.
Even on Snapchat, the cloud still remembers it.
Absolutely.
Do we have another question? Yes, over there.
Hello, my name is Ann Morrow, and I have 2 kids, 2 lovely daughters, one here and her twin sister Lily, and they're both on the spectrum. And I know that they have incredible potential and ways to contribute to the world. They're 19, and this school is so wonderful, but they're 19.
What are they starting to get together for a portfolio?
Oh, they have that. They have that. But there's another element that I'd like to talk about too. So I wish that the Temple Grandin School had a transition program. This is the hard part for us because any new situation, as Annie has said, okay, I'm out of high school, and the uncertainty of her future right now brings tremendous anxiety. That's the time that they need support because of the anxiety. So if all of you could...
Well, you start doing some part-time work at 14. You can do safe retail at 14 in Colorado. Because for my business, I had to buy these safety posters. And I found out that 14 for safe retail in Colorado. Let's get a part-time job before you graduate.
But Temple, the girls don't have an aunt that can, you had this wonderful benefit of being able to get out of the home, go to another environment.
Well, how about just get a job in a store or something?
Yeah.
No, I mean, yes. Let me tell you what happened with my aunt's ranch. When I was 15, I was afraid to go to my aunt's ranch. I was really scared to go. And Mother gave me a choice. I could go out there for a week and then come home, or I could decide to stay all summer. And I loved it when I got out there, and I stayed all summer. I also want to let you know, I had a lot of problems with nervousness too. When I gave my first talk in graduate school at Arizona State University, I panicked and walked out. You keep growing, you keep learning. But really, we need to get a job. And if they're 14 and up, they can do work in any just regular retail. Meatpacking plants not allowed specifically. But
A job and learning how to, taking the time, investing the time now in learning how to manage the anxiety about working.
that's right.
That you open it up, you learn to accept it, and the more you reject it and struggle with it, the more it gets the better of you. So taking acceptance and commitment therapy very seriously is something I would recommend as somebody who's benefiting from it tremendously right now.
And finding that mentor in the employment. And in this case, you talked about, do you declare when you come in? If you've got an employer who's engaged in the community, or find somebody else in the company who is involved in the community. In our case, at Cable Labs, we have 3 families that have diagnoses for their children. We have one of our executives who sponsors them and helps them with their kids. We find outside programs for them. We bring their kids in as part of some of their training programs. Find an employer who gets it.
Well, the other thing is just networking in the neighborhood. Just think about some of the shops that you shop at and find one where the manager would be willing to work with your daughter. There's all kinds of things you can just do in the neighborhood. My first job for the seamstress, mother just saw a sign on a house that said dressmaking, and I was very good at hand sewing because they taught hands-on things in my school, and offered up my services, and I took apart dresses and I hemmed them, and I loved it, and that was just done in the neighborhood. But it needs to be outside the home. It's got to be outside the home. And it can be volunteer as long as it's on a schedule outside the home where you've got to be there and you've got to do it.
And Phil makes a brilliant...
And have a manager that's willing to work with you.
Yeah, right.
And have the right manager. You got to find the right boss.
Because that's the key. And there's 2 ways that can break. It can break really well in the long run, or poorly and have such an adverse or averse reaction to the work environment that you get even more anxiety. But in my case, it was a lot like Temple's, where diagnosis or not, I was raised by people who said, listen, this is exactly how you behave. And my parents did not play games, so it was very...
Oh man, a hissy fit. Oh, temper tantrum in the 50s in church.
Oh, forget. In church?
Oh, in church, no way. No way.
No. Game over.
Yes, that's right.
But I'll tell you, my dad was, that's how you act. And that was very good for me, because then I knew that when he said, I grew up on a farm, and rather than insisting that I work with him on the farm, he saw the value in the part-time job, and he said, why don't you go work for Ace Hardware, this hardware store?
And it also gets you out of the house. I think it's important to do that job, these teenage jobs, outside the family. And fortunately, in this state of Colorado, you can do safe retail at 14.
14. That's
in this
incredible.
state. In other states, it's 16.
Yeah.
And the law, according to my posters I have to buy, well, I actually unrolled them one year and actually read them. That's how I found this out. And
You read the employment folder.
I read this poster that I came in a mailing to. and I took, one year, the first year I got them, I didn't even bother to take them out of the cylinder, but then I took them out of the cylinder and I read them. And I was very, very happy to find out that in this state we can do a safe retail job at 14, and at meatpacking plants, definitely not. They're specifically excluded from this. And you have to be 18 to do them.
That's a huge industry here, though, so
Oh,
that's
it
a big
is.
deal.
Oh, yeah, we got the big plant in Greeley, plant in Fort Morgan. They both have my center track restrainer system.
I think
And one of
we have another
the things
question.
that motivated me in the 70s, when I was in my 20s, first working on my projects, I wanted to prove to people I wasn't stupid. That was a gigantic, huge motivator. And when I got those dip vats done, the movie showed them getting messed up. They got them back together again, and they worked just fine. But when I got those projects done, I realized, well, a stupid person couldn't have done this.
Can I entertain this for a
Please.
second? Why did you feel you had to prove that? Did people tell you you're stupid? What was the motivation so
No, I was
strong?
always just considered kind of weird. I just wanted to prove I could do it. There was, when I was a young kid, some people thought I was mentally retarded when I was a young kid. And I wanted to prove I wasn't mentally retarded.
Right, and you carried that with you into your first jobs.
And I love the fact the movie had my actual drawings in there. There's a scene in the movie where cattle are animated over a drawing with all the meat packing plant managers at a desk. That's one of my actual drawings, a copy of one of my drawings that those cattle are animated over. And I love the fact the movie showed my work stuff. They made a working replica of the dip vat. In fact, I was down there fixing the anti-drowning gates the night beforehand because real cattle are going in real water, and we had to make sure nothing happened.
Sure.
But it had chocolate milk with Hershey's syrup on top for chemicals.
Jen, do you have a question for us?
I've got one here, and then there's one in the middle.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Anu. I've come from Bangalore, India. One of the questions I had was with companies like HP and several others, we struggle with basic diversity, cultural diversity and gender diversity. This is an added thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do we blend all this and make something meaningful?
Well, I think
It's a broader question.
Yeah, so I think from the standpoint, I think one of the fallacies of Silicon Valley is the gender diversity problem, much less a broader diversity. But the way you're going to change an organization is from within. If you take a look at what HP's done over the last 9 years, 10 years, it starts from within. We started Hacking Autism. HackingAutism.org, which is the nonprofit I now run, started actually at HP with full support of Mark Hurd, who was CEO at the time. But as soon as we started that and we put the word out and asked for employee volunteers to participate, now take 240,000 employees, do the autism number, my mailbox exploded,
Yeah.
right? Because they didn't have a voice inside the organization. And we changed HP from the inside. HP now, working with Special Stern, has an entire program, starting off with HP Australia, where the software test and development teams are located, or at least a large concentration of them, with a specialty recruiting and qualification process. We don't care if you have a college degree, we don't care, it's about your portfolio and your ability to come in and demonstrate just your ability for the job. And so it's a demonstration-based model, not a resume, degree-based model, which is a lot of the recruiting and hiring. And that's just one country of 178. HP is committed to that program and has continued on, and I'm still engaged. In fact, I get calls from HP Australia even today asking for my help with HP Corporate. I have to remind them I left HP 4 years ago. But I'm still I'm a fan of HP. It's a great, phenomenal company, phenomenal employees, both HP Enterprise and HP Inc. And they're very supportive of this program. Gabby, who runs what's called Social Innovations at HP, is a big supporter. It's guerrilla warfare. You're not trying to change this by either legal means or legislative means, puts it in the wrong light.
I totally agree with you.
Yes.
You can't do that. You've got to do it from the inside. And look, there's enough of us that are passionate about the autism community. We can change this. It's not somebody else's job. It's our job.
And we got to
do
show
it
them. We got to show them what we can do.
Exactly.
It's the can-do part.
Yes.
Use the proof
Yep.
point. And this is the case of, Temple and what Temple's done for this community, of being that representative of the impact that those on the spectrum can have. But we as a community, we own it. We need to make that change. We need to be that demonstration. Schools like Temple Grandin School, which are phenomenal programs, but look, we're here tonight to help Temple Grandin move into a bigger school. The constraint for Temple Grandin School isn't because, that's all the students that are around here. There's a waiting list. There's families who want to move to Colorado, and I get this request when I'm out talking about Hacking Autism. I was in New York, and I had someone stop to ask me about Temple Grandin School, and should they come to Colorado, right?
No, I want to just add,
We are the community here that has the benefit of the Temple Grandin School. We need to build a bigger school so that we can help more families with their kids have this success and the success of this transition to get to college and be
Well, the
meaningful
thing-
impacts.
I went to special school, Hampshire Country School, back in the early 60s. And when they had 26 students, it was absolutely excellent. And when they got it up to 80 students, they had a mess.
Right.
So I'd rather say there's a point where
There's a
single
size
school
that constrains.
gets too big, and then you need to start another
Exactly.
school, another small school somewhere, because Hampshire Country School was wonderful at 26, and then the state of Massachusetts started dumping their juvenile delinquents there, and
Exactly.
that turned into a gigantic mess, and I was there through all of that.
Yeah, let me qualify my statement. Don't misinterpret it needs to be a bigger building. It needs to be Temple Grandin School, and the model that's proven out here needs to scale to help more families.
It needs a better building. I totally agree
needs
with that.
that.
Absolutely. That house is crumbling. But on the other hand, if these schools get too big, too many students, they don't get the personal attention. Then you
Correct.
need to start another small
Yep,
school
exactly.
somewhere.
But the guerrilla warfare comes in where you, and yes, companies, it helps to explain what we can do, what our strengths are, but it also is better to have a bunch of success stories out there.
Correct.
It's better for all reasons, not just marketing.
Well, I can
ones.
think of all kinds of success stories that
Yeah.
I've worked with on the construction sites. Meatpacking plants that have got old hippies in the maintenance shop that I know are on the spectrum, and they managed to survive 3 plant owners. That's because they're my generation. They got great careers. Took
Yeah.
welding in high school, got a job on the line. They didn't like the job on the line, so they hung around the maintenance shop. And I, working on these projects, I've worked in construction on every single major big meat company, and a lot of these guys just came in with their welding skills, and they've had great careers. Again, it's portfolio, selling your work.
Hey, Tim, but real quick though, what's your take on one of the things that I think that we have done particularly in the U.S. is the de-emphasis of trade schools.
I think we got to put it back. Some states are putting it back. Texas is starting to put it back. And when I went and gave a talk at a high school 5 years ago, and they were just in the process of shutting down their auto shop, and I thought that was just terrible because we've got to get kids hooked on some of these things in middle school and high school.
Right.
It's almost too late at the community college. I do a lot of talks around in a lot of colleges, and I went to Fermilab. It's fun to spot the Asperger there. And the thing that was interesting about that is I asked a number of scientists how they got interested in physics. They got interested in physics because a high school science teacher.
Yeah.
This is where these high school years can just be so important.
Yep.
My high school science teacher got me turned around, got me interested in studying.
But you had science teachers who got you interested in studying, but what is really fascinating to me about your generation, my parents, and the way I was raised by people of that generation, it seems like we have kind of shifted from how can you contribute to the society, and now it's almost like the tide is turned to what is society going to do for
Well,
me?
I've always had the feeling that I had to give something back.
Yes, and I don't
That's
know if
how I
people
was
have
brought
that.
up.
So if
And
we
the
can
one thing I
balance it.
learned in church was we had a Christmas service, and each child had to give a toy. And one time I suggested giving a yo-yo, and Mother made it very clear that I had to give something better than that. And the minister would talk about, it's better to give than to receive.
Sure.
That made an impression on me. These are some basic things. You got to give back.
Right, and being able to contribute, it's so easy when you're doing a project at home with your kids, be involved. Hey, can we help? Why don't you just run point and make sure no monsters get in? But actually making the kids contribute to the process around the house is huge.
We have got time for one more question, I think. So, Jen, you had spotted someone.
Hello? Can you hear me? All right. So I kind of want to go based off of her question and also with you guys. Would you be interested in if a program was introduced as a transition thing to possibly even let kids job shadow you guys? Or, because practice is what makes you learn. That is how you get better at the socialization.
The only problem with me is I'm traveling 85% of the time outside the state. Is a problem. Otherwise, I would say yes.
Yeah. What
yeah.
about when you're in town?
As somebody who would benefit, go ahead.
Oh, when I'm in town, just trying to catch up with all the correspondence and bills and things
The
like
exciting
that.
career of catching up on correspondence.
That's what I do. And
I know.
writing, where I've just got to get some writing done.
You can't have somebody watching
I
that.
can't have someone watch that.
I would let somebody.
I have let people come to some of my classes, but we've got limited space in the classroom.
I think it's important for kids to be able to see it happening in real time. We talk about internships, and it might be with a company, or you might be shadowing somebody, or it might just be a person to call. Because when I transitioned from company life to, hey, now I'm going to be an author, and I really enjoy speaking to people. Again, our friend John Elder Robeson called me and said, I understand you have some questions about speaking. I said, well, yeah. And he talked to me for 45 minutes. Here's how I did it. And he's very, if you know John, he's very to the point, and it was the best conversation.
Well, the other thing, I remember talking to John when he first did his first book, and I said, John, don't give up your auto repair business. It's important that you still be a car guy.
Yes.
You know, people say to me all the time, why don't you just do full-time autism activism? Well, autism is an important part of who I am, but the college professor and all of the cattle work, that comes first.
Yes.
Because I'm seeing too many kids today getting so hung up on their autism rather than getting hung up on electronics or computer programming or farming or whatever thing they can make a career out of.
Right, something they can contribute. And it's good to have advocacy, but it doesn't need to be the only thing
Well,
that you
this
do.
is the thing that worries me, and that's why I'm not going to let it totally take over.
Yeah.
And I still plan to keep on being a professor and do some consulting work and write livestock publications.
Good for you. And Phil, the trade school things, John Robeson, because he preserved his car thing, he has now launched a trade school within his company.
But he was thinking, well, maybe I just would give up the key. I said, no, John, there's going to be times when you're with your customers where you're just a car guy.
Sure.
Because not everybody's going to know about the book.
Right. Yeah.
And he's able to take that his car repair business and use it as a way to train people.
Sure, and now he's got a bunch of kids with Asperger's who benefit greatly from going to his school because they love cars and they've got a car guy.
And there's a ton of jobs for mechanics, a ton right now.
Well, the other piece on that is if you don't follow Micro from Dirty Jobs, he's got his nonprofit, which is all about helping kids college is not the right fit. It includes kids on the spectrum in trade
And
schools.
skilled trades aren't for everyone.
Right.
I tell parents maybe 20% of the Asperger type of students that a skilled trade to be suitable. So I'm not saying it's one size fits all. No way.
Correct. Yep.
So let me ask, if I may, then a closing question to each of you. And what I'd like to ask you for is 2 pieces of advice. And Dave, I'll start with you, but it's the same question for each of you. What's a piece of advice you'd give to employers who want to work with neurodiverse employees? And what's a piece of advice you'd give to people on the spectrum making their way or hoping to make their way in the work world?
In the work world. So the advice I would give to any employer, spectrum or not, would be like Phil. just call him. No, really get to know your workforce for their strengths, not for the parameters that the colleagues have put on them. Make it about their portfolio and measure them on what gets done, not how you think they should have gotten it done, barring anything like not legal. But also, you're not a doormat, you have a company to run. This isn't a sheltered workshop, after all, it's a company. And so make sure that it's very clearly conveyed, hey, this is some give and take. These are some things I'm going to extend to you, maybe some license that you don't have in other companies, but pony up, like we need the results. And I think both of you will go very far in that relationship. I think my advice, and I hope you listen with open hearts and minds with this, my advice to young people and their parents trying to get going in the work world. First, understand, be exposed to a lot of things so that you find what it is that you love to do. The thing that puts you in a state of flow, and the thing that if you do it for 6 hours, you look up and you say, it's 9:30, that's what you should consider doing. And don't worry about how you're going to monetize it, just do it. Because the universe, to sound like somebody from Boulder, the universe responds.
I just want
What
to
an
make,
odd thing to say to a town
Boulder.
full of people from Boulder. My wife is a life coach. I can say these things because I believe in them myself. The universe responds really well to intention. And your intention is very pure when you find the thing that you love to do. So do it.
Okay, I want to make one comment for advice for employers. Don't be vague with the person with Asperger's. When I made a social mistake on my very first job at the Swift plant in Arizona back in '74, I criticized some welding, and I said it looked like a pigeon doo-dooed on it. And the plant engineer pulled me down into his office in the boiler room really quietly, not screaming and yelling. He just told me very quietly that was not appropriate talk, and I was to apologize to Whitey the welder. And I didn't tell him his welding was wonderful, but I did apologize for the rude talk. But Harley just told me exactly what to do. Now, the other thing is, there's parts of my job that had flow, but there's also some parts that were grunt work. Like when I worked for the Fire Ranchman, writing a feature article was wonderful, but I also had to do show and sale results, which is basically lists of bulls that won in the show. That's grunt work. So even the most fun jobs have got some grunt work that you've got to do.
Yes.
And Temple, do you have a piece of advice for young people making their way in the work world?
Well, are you asking me that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, the first thing is you got to show up. I mean, there are some basic things on that. I had my first job with the Fire Ranchman, I had to get my articles in by the 15th of the month. You know, there are some realities like that. Do a really good job, and don't pick fights with people. And there were some good mentors that told me how I had needed to change. There's a scene in the movie where my boss slammed down the deodorant and said, "You stink." That actually happened. There's a scene in the movie where the secretaries took me shopping, and that actually happened. And I was very angry at the time, but I thank that boss now. It's okay to be eccentric, but you can't be a rude, filthy, dirty slob. Yeah. You just simply cannot. Eccentric's okay.
Exactly.
Phil, top that. And I gotta follow that. I gotta follow that.
Yes, Phil.
You gotta be kidding me. I think for the employers, it is about understanding the broader definition of diversity and embrace it. Learn it, commit to it, and put together a structure that accommodates all kinds of diversity within the workforce. And that includes the neurodiversity. It is about being crystal clear, being very direct in what your expectations are, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So everybody operates under the same guidelines. I think for young people trying to, coming into the workforce that maybe are struggling finding employment because of whatever it is in the workforce that's a bias against their neurodiversity. I go back to the point made about find your passion. I've had some conversations where some of the kids are taking jobs because that's what they think their parents want them to do that job.
Well, there's too many people who have been forced to become doctors and found out they hated it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
The key here is finding what you're really good at, what you're really passionate
And let's
about.
leave all the conspiracy theories and weird politics at home. They're just not really welcome at work. That's
Right.
another really good idea.
Yeah. You're there to do a job.
Right.
The companies exist based on profitability. They need to deliver a product or a service that's of value. Find where you add an element to the value that the company creates, and you'll be a valuable employee like any other employee. People are very accommodating. People aren't there. I've come. At least in my work world, people aren't there intentionally trying to make your life hard. In some cases, if you're in a work environment that's a tough work environment, opening up and having some transparency goes a long way for people to understand how better to work together.
Well, most managers are good, but I've worked on lots of different projects for lots of different clients. And every time, once in a while, you run into the boss from where, who's really, truly awful.
Yep.
And there seem to be two kinds of awful bosses. The one that everybody hates, and the one that will sort of pick on the people that are different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you just got to find those and figure out who are the ones that are, what are the companies that you want to go work for.
And there's a lot of regular people that leave jobs because they have a boss they can't stand.
Yep.
Phil just made an excellent point. And you have a choice. It's not just, they gave me this ticket, this is the company I have to go work for. If that's not a good fit for you as a company, don't go there. It's not going to work out well for you or for the company.
Right.
You've got a choice, and it's incumbent upon you to be choosable, and it's incumbent upon you to know, is this a good fit for me?
Well,
Good executive functioning skills.
And we've got to learn working skills, because I've seen from situations where you had somebody that had an advanced degree in physics and engineering, had a super great job, and just couldn't handle being an hour's plane ride away from home, even though this person made enough money to fly home every week. She says, I just didn't like it. Well, it is work. And I questioned her, well, did you have a bad boss? Do you have a quiet place to work? And this was at a computer. There was nothing wrong with the job. Nobody was harassing this person or doing anything bad to them. just hadn't learned the work skill. It is called work. And along with the things that as flow, and I've had stuff with working cattle that was flow, there was plenty of grunt work too that you had to do.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, you have, the grunt work has to be there to get it done.
Temple, Dave, Phil, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a real honor to have you here to share your humor, your insight, and all of you, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And for those of you who are new to the Temple Grandin community, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Thank you so much.